All right, everyone, welcome back to another West Virginia Outdoor Economy webinar series. Super excited to be here with you today. As we kick this off, if you wouldn't mind to drop your name and your organization in the chat so our presenter knows who's in the room that he's presenting to. Today's webinar is gravel cycling route development from back roads to economic engine. There's been a big boom in gravel route development, bike packing development across West Virginia. And we're going to be discussing some of that, some of the who, what, why behind it, and the impacts that it can have with the community. My name's Corey Lilly. I'm your host of the West Virginia Outdoor Economy webinar series. It's great to be with you. I'm the Outdoor Community Development Manager for the Brad and Lee Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative. Our mission at the collaborative, our purpose is to address population loss across West Virginia, and our mission and how we achieve that is that empowering our local community and partners on the ground with through education, technical assistance, and support to enhance and advance the state's outdoor economy and quality of life through outdoor recreation. We do have a couple of different ways that we do that. We have two sides of the house. We have our talent attraction and retention side of the house. You may have heard of Ascend West Virginia or First Ascent, Teachers Ascent, Military Ascent. We have many different programs on this side of the house, and it's all targeted towards remote workers and keeping our brightest and most talented individuals here in the state of West Virginia. We're recruiting remote workers to relocate to West Virginia, and we support them through many different programs to connect them to the community and show them West Virginia's best outdoors. Our other side of the house, where I'm positioned, is on our outdoor economy side of the house. Um, we have many different programs here, trails training, education. We have infrastructure development, outdoor business development, support, local capacity and outdoor nonprofit, municipal county government support, and grants and research. Our trails training and education program, we have a mobile trails lab that travels across the state of West Virginia. And we have a schedule out that's right now. If you would like to participate in this, or any of your colleagues or any of the nonprofit members that you may be associated with, I'll drop a link in the chat of the schedule for this, but we have many different learning opportunities from half a day build and learn to full day rock armoring classes, rigging classes, design, and more. So this is all about being on the ground, learning, and getting your boots dirty with a team. Here's some photos of what it looks like to go through one of the courses. We'd love to have you out there, and if you want one of these to come to your community, please reach out. We'd love to work with you on trying to get some training in your community. We also have our upcoming business webinar series. Our last one we just had with digital relativity. It was really fantastic. I highly encourage everyone on the call to go back and watch that recording that's on our YouTube playlist channel. We have some others coming up, insurance for the outdoors and beyond ChatGPT, and many others scheduled out throughout 2026. So if you would like to partner on this, if you're a capacity builder or an organization supporting businesses across um, uh, your region, we would love to partner up with you so that you can get this content to your following. We also have some outdoor community meetups that are going to be taking place. Our next one is in conjunction with the New River Gorge Bike Festival that was announced yesterday. This is happening October 2nd through the 4th. The outdoor community meetup, the expo portion of the event, is happening on October 3rd. This is at Ace Adventure Resort. In the middle of all the festivities that's happening, we'll be hanging out under a pavilion. Nonprofits are welcome, outdoor businesses are welcome. Please reach out to me if you have an interest in being a part of the expo. This is an inaugural event to celebrate the brand new Needle's Eye Trail system. There's many different races that are taking place, group clinics, so on and so forth. Please reach out if you'd like to be part of this. So today, I'm really excited to introduce David Landis of V2V Trails. Um, David has been a partner in expanding the gravel network across West Virginia and building itineraries for gravel cyclists, and this is utilizing existing infrastructure. He's been working across northern West Virginia and in the Mon Forest, and now expanding beyond that. He's worked not just in West Virginia, but also across the US and the world in developing these types of itineraries and routes. And we're really fortunate to have him on today's webinar. David, please
Thank you.
feel
Go
free
ahead.
to take it away. I'll stop sharing my screen and you can begin.
How are we doing? Am my screen up?
Yes, got it. It looks good.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. It's good to see some familiar faces in the crowd, some Mountaineer gravel hats as well. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to talk about gravel cycling route development and all the parts related to that. But I'm super excited about this, partially because I feel like this is kind of the intersection of outdoor rec, tourism, community development, and economic opportunity. And it's a great way to take the assets a community really has and translate them into a new experience that can be marketed for increased tourism marketing destination. First, a little bit about me. My name is David Landis. I'm the founder of E2V Trails. I've got more than 15 years of experience mapping out routes and trails and guidebook development, working mostly as an outdoor recreation consultant these days from the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. But as Corey mentioned, I'm working all over the Appalachian region, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and keeps growing. So I'm super excited about that. I work with a lot of different partners, tourism agencies, nonprofits, communities directly, and different types of outdoor businesses. I often get sort of labeled as a mapper. I like to think of this as a bit beyond mapping and guidebook publishing, but really sort of developing destinations through these narratives and stories with the routes that they have. So before I really get into this, I'm going to frame a little bit where we're going to go today. I'm going to talk about what is gravel and why it matters, what the economic opportunity is with gravel. I'll go through sort of my process of route development, and then we'll look through a series of case studies with ongoing projects and published projects in West Virginia, and then talk about a vision for what West Virginia gravel could look like. So first, I just want you to think about this. This is really the process in a nutshell. How do we go from kind of a network of roads that exist to a polished tourism product? West Virginia has lots of unpaved gravel roads, but how do we interpret this? How do we organize it? The one main difference, we've connected these roads into a story, into an itinerary, into a route, into experiences. So we're not necessarily creating new roads or new trails, but we are converting them through a process into experiences that the user can digest and navigate. So what is gravel cycling? At its simplest, it's riding a bicycle on unpaved surfaces. It could be roads, it could be trails. Sometimes it's also referred to as mixed surface riding. And within gravel, we have day rides going out for a few hours, less than a day, and we also have bike packing, which is multi-day rides using camping overnight or staying indoors and lodging. But really, what I think gravel is, it's about exploration. It's about taking those few hours after work to go for a ride and find someplace new. It could be about exploring a new corner of the state. um, it brings riders in from the road background who are used to riding paved roads, looking for something more adventurous, and it brings people in from the mountain bike world. It's sort of in the middle of both. But really, it's bringing people in from all different places in the bike world, all skill levels. You have professional grade racing, you have families going out just looking for a way to get away from cars. But yeah, I really think it's a way to explore the world around us and see what's interesting in the places that we're visiting. It's really the one of the fastest growing sectors in the bicycle world. I think only e-bikes is growing faster, but e-bikes also kind of span mountain, gravel, and road too. So why is gravel growing so much? Part of it is this big boom in adventure outdoor tourism. People are looking for authentic places, authentic experiences, getting away from crowds. there's a big shift towards self-guided travel, and part of that is technology driven because we have mapping apps like Ride with GPS, All Trails, things like this that give people the ability to go, navigate a route, a trail without needing signage or maps in the way they used to. Um, Social media has also been a big part of this. We have more and more people broadcasting their own experiences in remote places, and that's been a way that's sort of driven this. And also, we're still looking at kind of this explosion post-pandemic, although the bike world has slowed down a little bit since that initial boost, but it's opened up a lot of people to riding, and gravel's just a big part of that growing segments of the bike world. Um, I also think there's been more attention to public land, and people are looking for ways to get, away from traffic and onto these quiet roads. In the last, number of years, traffic has also gotten significantly more. Vehicles have gotten bigger. Drivers are using phones and are being more distracted. So there's more of a shift in the bike world away from the paved road riding. So why West Virginia? West Virginia has such an affinity for this type of thing. You think about the country roads that the state has taken on as its mantra. And then if you look at the maps in GIS, and if you know the state, you know there's thousands and thousands of miles of gravel roads. And a lot of these are in the national forest sections, but a lot of them are state highways maintained by the state. It also has an amazing network of state parks. In addition to the national forests, it has a great system of rail trails and an ever-expanding network of mountain bike trail systems. And within this whole region, there's a lot of these historic towns and sort of this heart of what Appalachia is. So West Virginia really has all of these ingredients what make a gravel cycling destination exist. The work is really just to organize it into the visitor experience. So why should communities care? There's a lot of reasons for this, and we'll go through it. This is a shot from the town of Richwood and the edge of the Mon Forest, map of some of the sites and experiences that kind of tell the story of that place. But for one, outdoor rec is big business. We're talking about a $1.3 trillion annual US economy. About $47 billion of that is related to bicycle visitor spending. So that's not bike sales, that's hotels, restaurants, transportation, retail, entertainment related to bike spending. Strava, the biggest global athlete social media platform, social media, I don't know if you should call it that, training social media platform, they report a 55% year-over-year increase on users logging at least one gravel ride in 2023, which is a huge bump, and they expect that to continue. Within the bicycle market, we've seen about 670 million projected in gravel sales, and they expect that to keep growing and growing about 15% annually. So we're seeing this, incredible amount of growth in this sector. There's big money in this sector, and we expect it to keep going. Why do gravel visitors matter? They tend to exhibit a lot of the behavior that destination marketers want. Not every visitor has the same economic impact. So you think about the people who drive through on the highway, they look at the overlook and they keep going, versus someone who stops, spends multiple days, eats 3 meals a day in restaurants, buys groceries and snacks in country stores, and then comes back next year to do the same thing again. Gravel cyclists are really that second type. They like to spend time in local towns. They like to eat a lot of food, and they like to share their experiences. So they like to post on Instagram. They like to write reviews on Ride with GPS. They like to make videos out of their experiences. So they have a lot of earned media value as well as just frequent independent travelers. So again, think of every rider as a customer if you're a local business. The coffee, the restaurant, the lodging, the groceries, the breweries, the campgrounds, bike shops, and fuel. This all really adds up. And if I can get rid of that mark, and contributes to local economies. It's dispersed, it's spread out over geography and over time. So how much does a gravel cyclist spend. So there's not a lot of data out there on gravel specifically, but what we've been able to pull from various reports, from rail trails, from mountain bike systems, from cycling tourism reports, sort of a range of 125 to 250 a day, or 4 to 450 per trip has been reported and sort of averaged out. There's a great, span here as well. There's some people spending less, and there's some people spending more. Events sometimes are reported to bring 2 to 3 times more than this. But I want you to sort of think that, route development is economic development. And it takes sort of a process and an intervention to go from those existing roads and trails to routes, to create those experiences, to drive the visitors, to create business growth, which strengthens the community. And then, in turn, that results in the communities investing more in protecting and promoting those experiences. So think of it the flywheel effect. I think this applies to a lot of outdoor rec development, but there's a difference with this type of thing is that we're not building concrete infrastructure. We're leveraging experience infrastructure for economic infrastructure. And once we get this project finished, published, out and underway, as riders start to come, it keeps the process moving and the communities see the value and they keep pushing it onward, which should result, if done right, in sustainable long-term economic impact for local communities. So think about not just routes, but networks. Networks connect communities, they distribute economic activity, and this is very typical for how slow travel works and bicycle tourism. So think about a rider starting in a small town like Thomas in the northern Mon Forest. They might have coffee there. They might stock up on supplies. They'll drive or ride down the rail trail to Parsons, get lunch there, and they'll keep going, spend the night in Elkins, perhaps. So one route can connect to multiple communities, and a route network links up communities through kind of a hub and spoke model. So through this process, the economic impacts are really distributed. They're not just in the one major site and destination, but they really can support these local communities. So in turn, the communities start to think more collaboratively rather than just competitively. Visitors don't really care where the county lines are. They really just want memorable experiences. And I'll probably just keep driving that point in as we go. The benefits go a lot beyond just economic. Of course, there's this direct spending that cyclists and gravel and bikepacking tourists do. But you think about the repeat stays, the business growth that results from that, the slower, more spread out tourism, like that all contributes to more than just a one-off episodic economic input. The other thing I really love to see with these projects is how a community really feels a sense of pride and ownership as they become part of the process and tell their stories and start collaborating with each other because they have to basically pass the traveler off to the next place. They need to restock them and get them going. And they build connections with these visitors who are really trying to learn and experience the place. And I think a different way than many traditional tourists are. And the other thing that's been really great to see is organizational partnerships. This has created, a shared interest, the rising tide raises all ships kind of mentality, shared branding, and sort of looking at how networks can create other networks. When different groups come together to build something, there's a more of a natural reason to collaborate. And this type of work lends really closely to that. So why is this such a high ROI? So, I mean, I think the very basic way to think about it is the infrastructure already exists. We're not building a new snowshoe resort. We're not building a new Monday Lake trail system. We're not building historical sites. This stuff's all there. The public land's there, the national forest is there. What we're really investing in is organizing that set of assets into these experiences. So it's research, scouting, photography, storytelling, mapping, marketing. It's mostly a matter of investing in people's time to put all the pieces together. But we're not building, buying physical things. We're converting what we have into something new. And again, I think West Virginia is a great place to look at this. For one, the state's already seen similar things. The Hatfield-McCoy trails have become super famous all over the region. It's a lot of this is a different method and different project, of course, but there's some similarities in terms of dispersed rural tourism there. Rail trails are the same way. Think about the Mon River trails, think about the Greenbrier Trail. They connect different communities and disperse that sort of impact. Mountain bike networks also work as launching points and hubs for mountain bike recreation, connecting state parks, communities, and all of this. So really, gravel routes are kind of just the next step in that process to further connect this type of outdoor rec and network development. So what do we actually mean by route development? Um, this is a deliberate, repeatable process. Well, every project is different, but a lot of the steps are the same. It starts with research, so it's studying road networks, maps, public lands, tourism assets, GIS, looking at elevation, surfaces, traffic counts, existing recreational assets, and sort of putting together some of the best opportunities. Um, Through that process, there's a community engagement step, and this is, I think one of the most important steps, often overlooked. Tourism organizations know things that maps don't. Business owners know things about, what aligns with visitors. Land managers know certain things about, closures or up and coming changes that, a visitor may not. And a lot of the local riders really know the hidden gems. And I love to kind of just ask people when we start this project, what's your favorite road? What's your favorite place if you don't ride a bike? What's your favorite story of your community? So that step's super important. Then we draw out a bunch of ideas. We move into a period of field scouting. This takes a lot of time, checking roads by vehicle, motorcycle, bicycle, riding them for experience, taking notes, photographs, checking surfaces, looking at intersection, line of sights, traffic, all kinds of things, talking to local. You can't really design a great route from the computer. You need to go out there and experience it for yourself. So we have a team that works with that. And then those routes move into a testing period, things that change, things that we may not have thought about under different conditions. Then everything gets packaged into a digital guide for the rider to marketing content and sort of shifts to a promotion launch phase. So some people say, isn't it just about creating lines on a map? In some ways, it is that, but that's, like I said, just a small part of that. I think the way to think about it is, we're designing itineraries of curated experiences. What separates a good route from a great one? A rider can go out into these platforms and find, 1,000 different ideas or activities that people have drawn up, but they're not necessarily vetted. They're not necessarily all on public land. Some of them cross through private land. Um, and they might be a one-off. So I think the thing is, what creates this great route, this great experience? And so here's a few um, features that I think every great route really has. First, it has to be safe, right? It's not just about traffic, it's about those intersections, road conditions, lines of sight, things like that. It needs to have a story. Like it has to be interesting, it has to say something. It has to be scenic and beautiful. And there's lots of that in West Virginia, of course, with the forests, streams, communities, farmland, all of that. That creates kind of an emotional connection for the rider. It needs to have services. Some people like to get way far away from town, but if there's nowhere to fill up water, get food, or spend the night, also it doesn't really work. So we want to think about that in terms of design. And then another thing is sort of harder to define, I think, best defined in my mind is flow. The rhythm, the transitions, how the route feels. Does it have a high point? Does it wrap up well? Balance between challenge and reward. And I think when a route flows well, the rider stops thinking about the left and right turns and just really enjoys the experience. So I like to think about it more of sort of a mix of an art and a science that comes out in this sort of flowed experience. But most importantly, I'm sorry, some background. But most importantly, I think the stories are probably the most important piece. Like all the other pieces are foundational, but the stories are really what create the destination. West Virginia has incredible history to tell between coal, timber, railroads, Civil War, the company towns, the mountain communities, stories of conservation, stories of flood, Appalachian folklore and music, cryptids, all these things kind of make up the character of the state. Those things are all out there, we just need to find a way to sort of capture them and assign those into the routes, into the experiences. So I think when we go on a trip, we don't remember exactly what road we were on. We don't remember even what town we were in sometimes, but we remember like climbing that fire tower, swimming in that waterfall, that conversation with someone we met at a country store. And those memories kind of become our anchor of the place. So I would never, underestimate the value of how important stories are in this type of work. So again, how the project comes together, just go through this quickly. Collaborative phase process. Projects generally last about 12 to 18 months. There's different points for stakeholder and client input along the way. But going from that planning phase to a route development and field testing phase to content creation, photo stories, itinerary, digital publication, and then creating these launch-ready assets for our partners. And like I mentioned a number of times, really try to involve the communities in the process and get them to give feedback along the way to continually shape the outputs. What's the final product? We use Ride with GPS as the platform, but the real product is this connected network that we create. So we map out all these different routes, different lengths, from a few hours to a few days. We create a digital ride guide for visitors, and then sort of a library of content, route descriptions, written content telling practicalities, and story elements, photography of riders, of places, trip ideas and itineraries. And then, the outcome is really this clear, compelling way for people to experience a destination by bike. So the way the visitor experiences it is on Ride with GPS and the CVB website. CVB or partners, it could be anything. Whoever wants to embed this content can put it within their space. So Ride with GPS is probably the biggest global route mapping and navigation platform that combines the planning and the navigation in a really robust way. You can organize routes by lists, by a map, by collections for thematic elements, or by town. You can assign points of interest throughout the library. And then you can embed all of that back onto one of these websites with different filters. But it works well if you're at home on a computer. You can plan your trip. You can take sort of a curated route and adapt it to your needs, or you can just pin it to your account for easy access later. And then on a bike, they have an app that allows you to navigate and see all of these different pieces. And here's kind of an example of the difference between a Google Map route and a designed route. Um, this was an example that came out of our Jefferson County project, but people trying to connect Charlestown to the canal and often look in Google Routes. It puts you on a busy road. It looks for a flatter route for the bike. This is the bike nav, not the car nav. So just comparing that to a curated experience, which can really avoid all those unsafe roads that locals know and try to give you a story along the way. If you look at a route on the desktop, here's a route from the Mountaineer Gravel Network called Bigfoot Claims He Once Saw Chuck Norris, was the title. This title has gained lots of attention for this route. And actually, it comes from a local rider who lives on this route that I met when he was preparing for an afternoon ride. His name is Chuck Morris, not Chuck Norris. And then as we did more research on the route, we found some of the story elements showed that a lot of Bigfoot sightings were documented here. So we put these together into a Chuck Norris joke alluding to the Bigfoot culture of West Virginia. So when you go into Ride with GPS and you look up a route, what you see is, the stats on the left side, the title, the route description, which gives you some practical things, some story things. You can see on the bottom the elevation profile. The dashed areas are unpaved. The solid is paved. So you get a snapshot of what that all looks like. And then there's all these points of interest that show resupply, viewpoints, story elements, and that kind of thing. And if you open Ride with GPS and Google that title, I don't think you'll find anything else in the world that has that, and you can get there and poke around yourself. Within the platform, there's also this point of interest library, and this is really important for local businesses. So what we do along all the routes is we identify all the relevant resupply, lodging options, interpretive places for cyclists. Put the open hours, put a link to their website, it plots them on the map. And this is an integrated internal database that then can be applied to the whole route network and eventually kind of percolates back up into the Ride with GPS platform as community data. So by mapping out these routes, we put local businesses on our network map and on the global map. And this was super helpful if you're riding. You can also just call the business straight by tapping on the app. So then the way we reach visitors, the routes themselves really become a storytelling platform. They are itineraries, they are rides, they are experiences that people can do. They become shareable, like through through websites, through the partner websites, through Ride with GPS itself. If someone's riding through Morgantown and they pull up Ride with GPS, it'll suggest all these routes by Mountaineer Gravel, for example, that have been professionally curated. Through social media, we try to do a lot of storytelling to promote these. We've also worked to do more film and videos and reels, which really, really help put stuff into the algorithm for social media. And we also try to plug this through regional networks of bike packers at gravel events and really just push it out there. So we're creating tools that the CVB, that the partners, the event organizers can use. It's not just for one organization, but it kind of puts the stuff in the public space where cyclists are looking for this information. So again, with the project, this is kind of the outputs, and I've talked through this already, but really we're trying to put together everything from an assessment, community input, to marketing content, digital guides, and then whatever support someone needs to to launch this and keep it going. So I'm going to look at a couple of case studies in West Virginia. It was good to see people in the audience, not just from West Virginia, but from outside the state. So I think West Virginia is becoming a model for this and a place to learn from. And I've now been involved in 5 projects in West Virginia. They're all different from each other, and I'm going to walk through those and some of the lessons we've learned as a progression. And you can see on the map here, Mountaineer Gravel in north central West Virginia was the first one, and Mon Forest, that green section. Those 2 are published. The other 3 are in development, should go live next year. And they're all pretty different from each other. So I'll walk through some of the highlights from each of these here. First, Mountaineer Gravel. So this was the first major completed West Virginia gravel network project. It was supported by the Mountaineer Country CVB, which is based out of Morgantown but works regionally. And I was approached by them to design gravel routes. I'd been working on bikepacking routes throughout Virginia mostly and in Pennsylvania. And this was meant to have a regional approach. We started with 3 counties, which then became 4. 4 are live now, Mon, Preston, Taylor, and Barber County. And what became, interesting in the process as we looked at this region is sort of this hub and spoke network. And it was super exciting to watch the CVB and partners really think regionally. Like, how do we disperse tourism, not just, to more the area around Morgantown, but how do we, connect Morgantown to the far side of Preston County, to the far side of Barber County? What does that mean for business connections, for organizational partnerships? Um, and I think that that sort of set a framing for this type of work that was then attractive, and others sort of took note and followed, led to different lessons. So with this, you can see a map here, sort of the footprint of the network. Those green dots are kind of hubs where places where rides start from. Um, the project itself, like I said, is 4 counties, 3 more are in development, looking at Marion, Harrison, and Doddridge, which is kind of within the 7 county footprint that the CVB has for the state regions. It's currently we have 10 hubs. We'll be adding some more. We have 40 day rides, and we have one annual bike packing event, Grand Depart, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But with this, Mountaineer Country is the tourism office. We decided to brand it as Mountaineer Gravel. It's kind of a brand that represents the region, ties into WVU's identity in the Morgantown area, and really push that branding and consistency and quality standards to, I think, a degree that we hadn't really seen out there for this type of thing. So it was fun to be a part of pioneering this with the CVB and trying to create a new standard. And I think what we learned is that regional branding really does matter. People sort of associate one route with the other. They expect a certain type of quality from descriptions, photographs, points of interest, surface corrections in Ride with GPS. And people started to trust this network of curated routes. And if you do one, you probably have a similar experience on the other, or at least sort of a baseline of what to expect. With all these projects, we're starting to do some data tracking. This stuff takes time. And like I said, there's not much out there, but it's been 18 months since the launch of the first three counties in this network. And some interesting things that we've seen. We've seen about 21,000 views on Ride with GPS of our routes totaled up. We've been tracking Strava segment recordings and riders. This is a new 19,000 recorded segment activities by 3,750 riders in the last 18 months. This is kind of complicated thing to unpack. I could probably do a whole webinar just on this at some point, but what we're seeing is there's a pretty good rate of change from the start. Strava doesn't collect everything, but we have seen about a 20% increase in number of rides on those segments and in the number of riders recorded on those segments in the past 18 months. Another interesting thing that I saw at a glance was that the rural areas are seeing a higher percentage of increase than Morgantown. So, the urban areas, they have a lot more people riding. So the total counts were higher there, like on rail trails and within the city, but they're not seeing as much growth. So what this sort of shows me is that a lot of the growth is happening in the rural dispersed communities. This project's also gained about 3,400 social media followers across all the platforms. Um, and that continues to grow. A question about, did Mountaineer Gravel also create the Strava segments? Some yes, some no. So we tried to use existing segments as much as possible, but we did create ones for areas that did not have segments. So it's a mix. Again, it's a pretty complex thing to unpack, and I'd love to try to answer questions about that. I'm hoping we have more long-term data as this keeps growing that will give us more insight into like baseline. But at least what we see is a rate of change, and I'm taking quarterly snapshots to kind of see the difference in some of the seasonal effects on that too. Um, Mountaineer Monster Grand Depart. So this is a self-supported bike packing ride slash race slash scavenger hunt that we did, kind of looking at the cryptid culture of the region as a marketing narrative frame. And we did our first one last October. We have another one this October. We attracted about 60 riders who rode either 115 miles, 250 miles, sorry, 275 or 465 miles. Single stage, so they have a satellite tracker. You can see them on the map. We did professional storytelling through social media, reels, and a film. And those 60 riders reported about $22,000 of direct spend. And the bigger impact beyond just that spending was the, almost three-quarter of a million digital views we gained in that week of the event and after it. So this was a marketing sort of launch event. Most of those riders were, or half of those riders were first-time visitors to the area. So it was a mixture of locals and people from out of the region. But it really was another example of we're trying to track impact, track data, and put these places on the map. Next project, Forest Towns, is another recently published one. I believe it was March or April where we made it live. This is a very different setup. So we're looking at the national forest is kind of the backdrop, and then there's 12 gateway communities around the forest that are supported through an organization, a nonprofit called the Forest Towns Partnership. This project had more of a bike packing focus because of all the public land. Public land, national forest means you can camp dispersed basically anywhere off a road. And it was the combination of the public lands, the local businesses, and the towns that really pulled this together. This network is what we believe is perhaps the largest of its kind. It's around 5,000 miles of total routes. There is definitely overlap in some of the miles and different routes there. It connects 12 gateway communities. It touches 8 counties, not fully, but the parts of those counties in the forest. And in total, there's 66 routes in the network. 41 are kind of framed as day rides. 25 is overnighters or bikepacking routes, and then three longer multi-day, like ideally 3+ day circuits that span the whole region. And in this project, we also added something we called Ride to the Mon routes, where we mapped out a dozen routes from nearby bike communities. So you see like Morgantown, I think that's the Amtrak up in PA, Cumberland, DC Metro, Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, Roanoke, Blacksburg, the Paw Paw Amtrak station in Charleston. So a way that people could ride into the Mon. We did this collaboratively with riders from those communities for the most part. And I think it was kind of a neat way to kind of pull the region together with this bike packing focus. So this was a very collaborative project. It's an amazing area. It's probably, I think it's the largest public land mass within the state and really sort of some of the best riding I think West Virginia has to offer. So we saw it kind of as this core destination and it pulled in riders from the surrounding areas. Um, Other projects in development, Charleston and Kanawha River Valley area. This is a four-county project, Kanawha, Putnam, Jackson, and Roane counties. And the concept here is using the state capital's kind of urban gateway with Amtrak for people who want to arrive without a car. Um, there's this, activity center with conferences, with USA Cycling Road Nationals. And there's a lot of great riding that's fairly close to the city and pretty connected through a series of, interstates that kind of lead out of that. So the challenge here with this project is how do we use the capital of the state to leverage ongoing outdoor recreation through gravel and bike packing in the surrounding rural communities. So we're really just getting started on this one, but there's a lot of really great riding out there and super excited to kind of put this out there early next year. Another project, this is a single county project in Jefferson County, which is the far northeastern part of the state and the eastern panhandle. They don't have a lot of gravel. They have almost no gravel actually. So we decided to frame the project around story rides or story is the most important thing in my mind. So creating a curated network of routes, looking at the history, the culture, and the interpretation of that. So you could ride a route of John Brown's Raid, for example. But the big concept here, the Sino Canal towpath, has about 5 million cyclists a year, and that's just across the river at Harpers Ferry and Shepherdstown. So the idea to bring them into the state, capture more overnight visitors and spending from that DC metro area, and sort of this entry point into West Virginia. Question about public input for Charleston area? Yes, yes, we'll follow up with that. I'll keep moving just for time here. New River Gorge region, super excited to be a part of this one as well. Just getting started. The national park sort of mindset recruits a different type of visitor. There's this high adventure brand vibe of, whitewater, rock climbing, mountain biking that kind of characterizes this area, and a lot of really great outdoor assets to link up through new experiences. So the landscape's a little bit different. It's a bit challenging in some ways to create connectivity of routes across a major gorge, but presents a lot of interesting opportunities, I think, with that too, to connect these really amazing trail systems that have been developed. It's the only national park that seems to really welcome mountain bikers on trails in a way that we've seen. There's a really cool opportunity there to link up some more mountain bike slash gravel kind of experiences with adventure riding and more complex bike packing adventures. So the same principles still apply. Start with your existing assets, listen to your local partners, connect communities, create those experiences, and support local businesses. So there's lots of different opportunities across West Virginia. Different regions look differently. Um, but it's been really a lot of fun and exciting for me to kind of help figure this out with the local partners. So I'll come back to the questions at the end. I'll just keep moving through this. Thinking about a vision for West Virginia, um, it's super exciting to think about how these networks start to connect to other networks. And going back to this map, sort of what's been, worked on, what's out there, and what's being developed. I'm trying to, just paint a picture and imagine what this state could look like as perhaps the US's first connected gravel and bikepacking route network across the state, where people could enter at any point. You could ride from Pittsburgh down through the state, back into Virginia, loop in the Shenandoah Valley and come back to DC, for example. But the state has so much to offer, and I think it's just important for us to remember visitors don't travel to counties. They don't care about administrative boundaries. If anything, it's more interesting for them to cross boundaries. But they really choose their destinations based on the narrative branding. And that's why I think thinking, you know, outside of the box, beyond the lines is so important. Um, the more people we have invested in this, the more the state becomes a destination, and then the more the product becomes more sustainable for local communities when they see the impact. So just coming back to sort of that flywheel concept, begins with the things we have, sort of intervention to organize all of that, put it back together, create those experiences, create tourism, create businesses, and then get the community to really see that impact. So then instead of just, starting over, what we have is an incentive for local businesses and CVBs to keep marketing this experience, to keep protecting the roads. Like Loudoun County, Virginia is starting to lose its gravel roads because of development. But if we can see them as not just a liability, as an economically depressed kind of thing, but an opportunity, we can protect those. We can protect those experiences. We can keep investing in our marketing and look about how we can, protect our outdoor economy for the long term. So I think, this isn't just about cyclists, it's about everybody. It's about the bigger outdoor economy. A visitor comes to ride a bike, but they see the river and they come back to paddle. They bring their mountain bike when they ride by Monday Lick, and they start to make this a repeat destination. So what's still, I think, one of the most beautiful things about the gravel thing, it's about connecting everything. It's connecting communities, it's connecting activities, kind of getting to that point of a critical mass where you really develop an outdoor destination. Um, the gravel rides, they encourage people to stay longer, travel farther, come back and have a different experience. And, maybe they even choose to come and live in this place because it had such a good um, recreational experience, made great connections with the local communities. So just kind of think about it again, West Virginia doesn't need more roads, it really has all the pieces there. It's really something about putting that all together, story, the landscapes, the communities, and then the partnerships that all make that work. So yeah, thank you. I'd love to hear your questions and answer your questions. And
Thank you so much, David. That was really insightful, and I got lots of good juices flowing. And it looks like we have some questions here in the chat that I'll work through.
okay,
First,
great.
I think we have is Jacob's question about the public input sessions for Charleston Canal project.
Yeah. Yes, we're working on that. We're about at the point where we've had a sketch of what the routes look like. I'd say I'll drop my email in here too, and feel free to let's get in touch about that. Are
Sounds
you?
great.
Yeah.
And Jeff Simcoe had a question with, have businesses used these curated networks to expand or diversify their offerings, supported tours or other types of guided experiences?
Yeah, great question. Yes. And again, we're still kind of on the front end of some of this stuff, but one example we saw in Barber County, the West Virginia Gravel Series, they had an event drop out this year. The Kate's Mountain Challenge had run for a number of years, but for different reasons, it couldn't run this year. So there was a spot, and the gravel series organizers teamed up with Thad Kelly, who runs the mountain bike event in Philippi, Barber County, and they used a number of the routes we had developed to run a new gravel event called the Tiger Valley Flyer. So that was pretty cool to see. Like we kind of invested in creating this platform that then could be used as a lot of intel to sort of get an event up and running more directly.
What like
Yeah,
small
we've
businesses have you
seen
seen like
our
maybe expand their model, or like who maybe benefits the most from like a business perspective on the ground from some of these routes? Like small markets or stores and
I think it's the small stores and the lodging and the campgrounds probably. I mean, cyclists and bike packers, they eat a ton of food. I think it's this dispersed effect more than one sort of central business. We try to design the routes so you go through places that have that food and overnight option. So they sort of see this dispersed effect. If you run a guiding business or a like an event business, you can use this as either supporting the destination branding to draw people in. Like we've seen Grusk, the gravel race up Spruce Knob, had a big uptick in visitors this year because of I think the Mon Forest launch. So put sort of a spotlight on the destination. People said, I want to come. Oh, there's an event. That's an easier way to get into that too. But I really think it's the small businesses that see the most probably impact. They start to notice, oh, there's someone with a bike. They're coming in, they're stocking up, they're ordering 2 meals, and they keep going, kind of thing.
see. So the next question from Torin, how do you quantify the economic impact? Say one added a route for a community this route travels through to be able to say X route generated uh, this amount of money for town for a town. And one way that I've seen communities, like if they're doing like say a self-evaluation, like of course there's one way of contracting out to a firm to do an economic impact study of a specific thing, right? That you can get those. So it goes through a long kind of process that gathers data and survey. But one way I've seen communities be able to generate these impacts is, say, the data that you're getting back from Ride with GPS or Strava, and then there's an average spend of say a cyclist for a trip, and you had some numbers there, and then you're able to combine those numbers to be able to say this amount of spending with this amount of visitors on average is what's happening for this type of route. But that's just two ways that I've seen communities be able to do it in-house, to be able to get a general idea of what their economic impact of say a trail system is, and then you can also hire it out to a firm to do a more detailed, which can be a little bit more costly. But David, have you seen any other? Um,
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, what I've seen mostly happening is surveys put on by event organizers or by like partners like WVU, Doug Arbogast stuff, where they sort of get people to self-report what they're spending on this. And then from that data, kind of make projections as to where that money was spent in terms of food or lodging or towns, and then projections from that. There are a lot of variables to break it out. People have been trying to figure this out. There's things like tracer AI, where cell phone data is sort of pinged, or you try to see like where someone moved from to, and they'll split out like cars and pedestrians, but not necessarily bikes at this point. There's lots of things people are trying. I think at this point, what we're looking at is mostly self-reported things that are solicited through surveys and then projected. But that's mostly direct spending with the limited number of people that are willing to self-report. And even things like Strava segments, like we get the people who've recorded activities on Strava segments that represent an activity, but Strava doesn't make all that data open necessarily in terms of where they came from. Are they local? Are they a visitor? How many people are not on Strava and not recording that went and bought food in this town? So there's a lot of pieces. I think the more data we can gather, it'll take some time, but I think we'll be able to show more and more of like rate of change, where growth is happening, and we can
mhm.
further refine the process of creating routes that amplify impact.
Yeah, the three like main sources of data I see being collected is that survey data where you can get that the average spend from folks, but it's labor intensive. You're having to either send that out after an event or you're out there in the field as people come by on a trail system and asking them a series of questions to get that number. And then you have your novelty data, which is that cell phone data or Strava data or Ride with GPS that kind of gives you a general number. And then you also have your trail counter data, how many people are passing by a certain point on a trail. And so by utilizing some of those different data sources, you can generate some of those economic impacts. Drew Gatlin has a longer one. Uh, let's see where the question
You want
is.
me to try to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
summarize that?
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just some thoughts I posted regarding right what you had witnessed or what you have
Mhm.
witnessed with the growth in gravel riding, or I guess the growth in route usage, right? I hope that we can, as you continue to expand the system and work with the CBB, right, like look
Mhm.
at a higher variety of routes in the urban area, right? Like if all people are seeing advertised in Morgantown are these very long routes that begin with or are just exclusively the rail trail,
Mhm.
then I think by default they will then particularly if they're not curious, right? Just look at the map and then see that there's a lot of variety, right, elsewhere in these urban area or rural areas, right? And then
Mhm.
drive to there or maybe ride there, right? Uh,
Mhm.
so, it seems like to me, would you agree that that may explain some of that difference, right? Or do you
I
think,
think it may. I mean, we're just sort of tracking what we've created. So, there's a lot more out there. Like Morgantown, Charleston, like Morgantown has a rail trail access in and out. So we tried to prioritize safety and ride experience when we designed it to use those, which, biased experiences on those rail trails. Also, it's a gravel project, so trying to ideally not just send people on paved roads. The bigger the population center, the harder it is to create high percentage gravel routes out of town, right? So Morgantown is no exception. But there's a lot of attributes and variables to unpack from that Strava segment thing in terms of length. Is it uphill? Is it downhill? Is it paved? Is it unpaved? We could keep going deeper and deeper into that. Be happy to chat and explore best ways to use this. It's complex. There's so many variables. I don't know if that answered your question, but I guess I would just say we didn't intentionally design paved routes near Morgantown, which might get a lot of use too because of the nature of the project's framework. Um,
yeah, cool, thanks.
yeah, happy to chat more offline too.
Quick question, like what really makes a great gravel route or just cycling a route, since we're kind of talking more than just graveling and some of this, to like a destination graveling route or even just a community one, like what it seems like Drew was kind of mentioning more of. Um, what really defines those differences? And yeah, like
Okay.
the difference between like a destination one versus like a good one, right? Like what are the differences between those two, like in what you
I
might.
think, yeah, a destination quality. I think for one that like we've noticed the bike packing routes that are longer and have a strong narrative component really, really push the destination and get the most attention. For example, in northern Pennsylvania, the Wild Elk Gravel Network that we put together, just like you can go ride your bike where there's the largest wild elk herd in the eastern US, like super compelling concept.
Mhm.
And you can go and do this 200-mile multi-day ride. So I think when there's a strong narrative, that story element's really there, and there's something that's sort of clear, digestible. This is how I do it. One, two, three. Um, I think people traveling from afar, they want to do something for multiple days. They're not going to come and ride a 20-mile ride and drive 5 hours for that. They might be passing through and say, "Oh, I have 2 hours. I could go ride that." But I think they really need to see that like this is a whole experience. It's like the Mon Forest Circuit. There's a guy came in from Arizona last month to do the 600 miles. Like, so he wanted a bigger epic experience to make it a destination trip. If that
Got
makes
it.
sense.
So we're right coming up on time at noon here. So our last question, if you could answer this one quickly from Jesse, are you specifically working with just CVB and tourism bureaus to market, or are you writing blogs, trail recaps for the tourism folks?
I'm mostly probably chatting with organizations at this point rather than just putting stuff out there, but also just trying to get the word out. I'm mostly trying to keep up. There's so much interest in this stuff right now that, trying to figure that out.
So the work and projects are happening through CVBs and
Beats
nonprofit
and
partners, or?
Nonprofits, metro planning organizations. Some see it as more of a marketing thing, some see it as a planning thing. Every project in every place is a little bit different. Some will fund it from hotel tax. Some will apply for a grant and wait 2 years to get that. West Virginia is different than Pennsylvania, which is different than Virginia in terms of all this and how it works. But what's been interesting is people who are motivated usually sort of figure out a way to pull it all together. And it's been exciting to see that happen in West Virginia, I think.
Well, thank you
Um,
so much, David, for sharing your insight with us and being on the webinar series. Really looking forward to watching Mountaineer Gravel grow and the other projects that you have lined up come to fruition. So, thank you so much for your time. And everyone will have this recording up on our webinar series on YouTube, and we'll send out the slide deck and the presentation recording after this to everyone who registered. So, thanks everyone for your time, and we'll see you back on the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.